mixed to order. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to the members of the public for joining us. We will move into our second item, public comment. Let's start with anybody that's joining us virtually. Does anybody joining us virtually wish to provide public comment? Going once, going twice.
Sold.
Sold. We'll move on to individuals within the courthouse. If you could come up to the microphone, provide us with your name and address, and provide your comments to the committee.
Good morning. My name is Todd Troy. I live at 226671 Swan Avenue in Rib Mountain. I'm currently the president of the Wausau Wheelers Bike Club. We have over 150 active members registered as of now, and typically run about 200 members a season. Have a pretty good sized following on our Facebook page. We have over 700 people following the page. We consider ourselves to be the leading advocate of road cycling in central Wisconsin. A week ago, I had sent a letter in that I was hoping would be included in the agenda here, and I'd like to read that in. I sent it to members of this committee as well as Kendra. I'll just read it. Good afternoon, Kendra. Please forward the following information to the County Infrastructure Committee to be included in the May 5th meeting. The Wausau Wheelers Board of Directors is very concerned about the proposal to add shoulder rumble strips to many Marathon County highways. While we support the addition of centerline rumble strips to these highways, shoulder rumble strips present a serious safety hazard to bicyclists, even when there are bicycle lanes added to the right of these rumble strips. Often these bike lanes contain sand, rocks, and debris, forcing the rider to hug the fog line where these rumble strips would be installed. Ample evidence of road debris in bike lanes can easily be produced upon request. If shoulder rumble strips are installed, riders would have to ride in the traffic lane to avoid the rumble strips and bike lane debris. Further traversing these rumble strips is very dangerous for bicyclists at any speed, since they can cause the rider to lose control, resulting in serious injury or death or property damage to expensive bikes. We agree that shoulder rumble strips may have benefits for motorists in that they can help reduce injuries, property damage, and alert distracted drivers who edge toward the shoulder. However, we believe there are many more negatives than positives if these shoulder rumble strips were to be added. These include, but are not limited to, navigation hazards to cyclists which could result in the loss of control, force cyclists to use the traffic lane when road debris is present in a bike lane, increase the likelihood of serious or injury or death to cyclists, increase the likelihood of property damage to bicycles through rattling or due to crashes, would ruin the quality of cycling in the area, would deter cycling tourism resulting in a loss of tourism dollars, would make the roadways unattractive to young urban professionals that the Chamber of Commerce is seeking to attract to the area. Further, new car and truck technology is more frequently adding lane departure alerts and mitigation to vehicles, making rumble strips less useful. Also, the AASTHO, American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, says that rumble strips are not recommended where shoulders are used by cyclists. We recently recorded a couple of videos on Highway 153 east of Mosney where center rumble strips were installed. This is excellent pavement, but the video shows how vicious rumble strips are for cyclists to pass over even at low speeds of 10 to 15 miles an hour. Many of the members in our cycling community travel at a considerably faster pace of 18 to 25 miles per hour, and the effects of crossing these strips would be even more jarring than in the attached videos. Please find the links to these videos below that have been uploaded to YouTube. And then I provided two links then I go on to say, we discussed the proposed addition of these rumble strips with our membership to our spring kickoff meeting this past Tuesday evening, and received many, many signatures from the members who attended the meeting in our resolution opposing these shoulder rumble strips. Scans of the resolution and member signatures, as well as their contact information, is attached. I did bring those along with me again today. Both myself and Dennis Helke plan to attend the meeting on May 6th next week, so that we may express in person how concerned we are about this proposal and would like to address the infrastructure committee at that time. We will also be asking community supporters of cycling to reach out directly to their town and village supervisors, as well as Randy Pfeffrick, Kevin Lang, and James Griesbach, to express their concerns on the issue. As the leading advocate of road cycling in Marathon County, with nearly 200 active members and over 700 followers on our Facebook page, we feel we must speak up. Our group rides traveled in excess of 35,000 miles for the 2019 season. Over almost all of these proposed roadways where shoulder rumble strips would or could be installed. And then I gave my contact information. I'd like to point out on the 35,000 mile figure that that's just during group rides. That's not individual riding of the public or our membership. Those are just group rides that we did. So our club alone put on over 35,000 miles in 2019. I expect that total this year to be closer to 40,000. That's virtually all in Marathon County, heavily on Highway J, Highway Y, Highway N, Highway KK. You know, it's pretty much smack dab where you want to put it. The Wood Spokes Bicycle Club over in Marshfield, you know, is affected by the things that are proposed down on Highway, I think it's Highway G or C down in the corner of Marathon County. So any of these spots really are places that would really impact bicyclists who have to use the roadway. Any questions?
Does anybody on the committee have any questions? Hearing none, we thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Denny Helke, a Wausau born and bred.
Denny, before you get started, can you provide us with your address?
Oh, Dennis Helke, 2065 Ronald Street, Cronin-Wetter, Wisconsin.
Thank you, sir.
You bet. Just a few notes. In 2015, the city of Wausau and for Marathon County was ranked first among small cities as a bike-friendly city. In 2018, we got another award from the League of American Bicyclists. And as Todd mentioned, these awards help bring bicyclists to our area. And we feel as a bike club, and personally, if we add rumble strips to the section of roads that we frequently travel, as Todd had mentioned, our base is out of the Aspirus YMCA in Weston. So without repeating aloud what Todd said, I have from the League of American Cyclists, and this is an article from Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, how do rumble strips impact cyclists? Rumble strips are virtually impossible to ride a bicycle on or over. And Todd and I, actually, hopefully you guys can see the video that we put on. I have a cell phone attached to the front of my handlebars, and as I rode over the rumble strips, the vibration caused my phone to flip. I've got a Garmin device on the other side of my handlebars that also moved. And there's just no way that as riding in a group like we do, that the ride leader points out, things that are in the roadway or whatever, it'd be impossible to ride those same stretches as what's marked in the map that we were given. Anyway, rumble strips are virtually impossible to ride a bicycle on or over. They're at best uncomfortable even for a very short distance, and at worst can cause a cyclist to lose control of their bike and fall. They can damage a bicycle wheel. Bicycle wheels for the wheelers are typically they measure it in millimeters, 23 millimeters to 32 millimeters is pretty much an average for the bike. So there's not a lot there. Definitely the rims are thin, so damage, if you're done on a regular basis, definitely would occur. And that's just to the wheels. They can cause a flat tire. As mentioned earlier, the rumble strips collect debris. In an ideal world, the areas near where we bike or whatever could have it swept every once in a while, but I don't know how we go about doing that. Consequently, cyclists will avoid riding over them. And when rumble strips leave no room on the shoulder, the cyclist will have no other option than to ride on a travel lane. For example, one of the roads that were proposed for the rumble strips is Highway J. Highway J, it's only about a 1 or 2 mile connector to get from the east side of J to the west side. We have to travel, it's a narrow road. Your fog line on the right-hand side of the road, and to the right of the fog line, you might have 6 inches of gravel. So I don't have any idea where you'd put a rumble strip on that particular road, and that would force us to ride closer to the center lane. And on that road, you don't want to do that, because that road is pretty beat up anyhow. There's a patch on each side. I don't know anybody cycle here besides Todd and I? Jerry, okay. Jerry's probably the better one of all of us, but anyhow, it'd be moving everybody to the inside lane, which we don't need to do. The negative impact of rumble strips on the rideability of a roadway has prompted American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials and the Federal Highway Administration to provide guidance to follow when considering rumble strips on a roadway are used by cyclists. They recommend that rumble strips should not be used indiscriminately on roadways that are not limited access. Rumble strips should be used where there is a history of run off the road crashes, especially where there is sufficient recovery room for motorists to react to the alert provided by the rumble strip, and when the impact cyclists can be minimized. This means that at least 4 feet of unobstructed roadway shoulder remains after the rumble strips have been installed. That's Highway K is the only one I really know, KK, that has that. States should train and monitor contractors to ensure best practices are followed. Advocates should work with the state's Department of Transportation, municipal planning organizations, MPO, which I'm also part of, and county road commissions to verify that unnecessary rumble strips are not installed and that preferred bicycling routes especially are kept free of rumble strips. It is important to get it right the first time. Improperly installed rumble strips are expensive to repair, often costing many times more than the original installation. And if you go on YouTube, there was a great article about, I forget what state it was, they installed it, not with a lot of planning or whatever, but they went back in and covered everything up. That was very expensive. Often costing more than the original installation, and usually cannot be repaired without leaving behind an uneven surface or a shoulder prone to early failure. So I've been in the biking part of this thing as a healing process. I got on the road bike 15 years ago. I am the president of the Wausau Wheelers, current president, not current president, but president, past president, and involved with a lot of biking things. I'm also on the Sea Walk, that's a cycling with, or Central Wisconsin Cycling Coalition, Off-Road Cycling Coalition, also with the Cycling Without Age. So we're looking to have a safe biking area. And I think if rumble strips are added, it's just kind of gonna put a black eye on our area, so, thanks.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Helke.
Morning, everybody. My name is Judy Pagrazinski, address 226690 Blue Jay Lane, Ringgold, 54471, and I am here representing Rural Riders ATV UTV Club. I have been at several meetings in the past. Some of you know me quite well from emails and everything else. In 2019, your committee said that you would give us a one-year trial on opening some of the county road sections. We appreciate the small sections that are open. They really help us in our travels. But we are having an issue with not understanding why we can't have all of our, at least county rural roads open. There are no incidents in Marathon, Portage, Wood. I have an accident report. Most of the accidents are due to speed and alcohol, which you're gonna get regardless of what you're driving. We pay taxes. We pay gas tax because we have to run on fuel. We pay license fees. There's really no reason why we can't use them. I have almost 600 signatures. Some of these are from 20 and 19 from Tavern League Association, with every bar and restaurant that I could get to with the pandemic going on. They all want county roads open. They get business in winter because of the snowmobile trails, but in summer, anybody that has an ATV or UTV runs up north where they can ride anywhere they want. As a resident, lifelong resident of Marathon County, I would like to see the business here in Marathon County as well. I mean, why punish our businesses? Why punish our bars and restaurants with people traveling up north? We can use it here. Most of our traffic is done on the weekends when regular general traffic is a lot lighter. We have people right now that are running the roads wherever they want to go. At every meeting that I hold, I tell them, you don't do that. I can't control everybody. I've talked to officers who say it's very confusing because they see somebody on the road, they got to pull out a map. Is this section open? Is it not open? I've talked to town officials. None of them have had any incidents. They would like to see more roadways open. I guess that's about it. I just want to say we'd like to see a possibility of at least getting the rural areas open. Give us a one-year trial. If you don't like it, or if the road is too busy, you can always post one road saying we can't use that or a section of it or whatever. So I'd like consideration for that with the committee. I know right now you have a ordinance that says we can have sections open, so you'd have to put an amendment to that ordinance to say that more county roads could be open. Any questions on why I'm here? If not,
Does anybody on the committee have any questions for Judy? Hearing none, thank you for your comments.
thank you.
Hi, my name is Don Anundson, and I am the chairman of the Township of Adjourn, and also the newly president of the Western Shawano County ATV UTV Riders. I'm here to
Before we get
also
started,
request
can
that
you
we
give
look
us
at
your
opening.
address, sir?
Oh, my address?
Yes.
218-368 County Road 00 in Eland. Sorry.
Thank you.
But our plea has been, every county around Marathon County is open with their county roads, whether it be Langlade, Lincoln, Clark, Portage, Wapaka. They're all open to the use of county roads. We're very familiar in our end of the county, especially with all the farms and the farm equipment, which travels slower than what we travel. So we're kind of used to the obstructions, and people are used to looking for the areas to pass and whatever. But our request too is it'd be nice to come to Marathon County. We do several rides per month as groups. We try to patronize a lot of the areas, a lot of the businesses, gas stations, bars, restaurants. And we have a good time, and a lot of us are pretty well white-haired, but we still enjoy it, and a lot of the younger people are getting involved in it too. So our request is it would be nice to get into even the south part of Marathon County, where right now County Highway J blocks us pretty tight. We can't get across. I'd love to get into Weather, where my family is, and patronize some of their businesses. So if there's any way we can work this out, and I know it costs us $100 every time we apply, but it would be grateful if we could try a one-year trial of opening up the county roads that are not severely busy. I know Jay is one that is busy, but if there's any way we can get a little portion of that to get through, to get into Weather, that gives us all the way into Mosinee and out to the western side of Marathon would be great. So any questions from the board? Thank you.
Does anybody on the committee have any questions?
I do. Richard?
Supervisor?
Yeah, what is the usual speed you guys are running at with UTVs now?
We can't go any faster than 35 miles an hour by law. And I'll tell you, when we're on county roads, we usually try to hold it at 35. Personally, when we get on the back town roads, 25 is even better because it's prettier to see everything. And, but that's, again, like Judy said, you're gonna have those hot rodders that probably push it to 40, 45, whatever. But I've been doing this for 2 years, and I'm just a newly patriot of it. But it's really enjoyable. It gives us a lot of things to look at with a lot of different scenery to look at. So our people, we just started this club on the western side of Shawnee, would like to come into Marathon, but we are pretty limited right now. Any other questions?
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the committee members?
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. I believe that's everybody that's in the room at the courthouse. I understand Kendra has some additional comments to read into our public comment.
Okay. First email being from Patrick Donnelly. James, Randy, Kevin, thanks for the work you do maintaining and improving the roads in Marathon County. As an avid cyclist, I can say many of the roads, especially the paved shoulders, make cycling a wonderful experience in the county. I'm certainly not alone in my assessment. Not sure if you knew, but Wausau and the surrounding area was rated one of the top cycling areas in the U.S. Actually, I think it was #1. There are a number of state and national bike touring companies who route rides through Marathon County. We have friends from multiple states who rave about the biking around our house. Our house is located just east of County KK on Burma Road. We consistently see cyclists using the road during nice weather. We give it the nickname of the cycling highway. The addition to the shoulder of KK from Burma Road to County B was great. KK can be a little busy with vehicle traffic at times, so the paved shoulder works great for bikes and vehicles. The paved shoulder added to County B a few years ago was a great addition and made cycling safer into Mosinee. Our concern is adding edge shoulder rumble strips to county roads used heavily by cyclists will cause us to ride more on the road, making it less safe for cyclists and possibly impeding traffic some. There are certainly some low traffic volume county roads with shoulders we ride safely on, but the roads in which rumble strips are being proposed are generally busier, hence the paved shoulders. I'm hopeful a compromise will be considered with perhaps limiting rumble strips to the center of the road. Many cars and trucks have safety sensors that would seem to minimize the even of the need for the rumble strips. No doubt you have a challenging job, and I have previously, as I said previously, we find most of Marathon County roads great to bike on. I hope you'll give mine and other cyclists' concerns serious consideration when moving forward with these potential changes. Next is from Rod Sorensen of Marshfield. Good morning, gentlemen. I'm sending this email regarding upcoming plans in Marathon County for installation of shoulder rumble strips on several county roads. But for the state personnel, I would also want to make the same request for other locations. As an avid cyclist who rides several thousand miles each year on Wisconsin County roads, but also an avid photographer / nature lover who drives thousands of miles on those same roads, shoulder rumble strips would have a very negative effect on the pleasantness and safety of my bicycle riding. It would defeat the purpose of the bike lanes because cyclists would be continuously moving into and off of the main traveled surface of the road. Please reconsider this decision so that all users of the roads can be best served. Center line and stop sign rumble strips are tolerated by cyclists because of the safety advantages outweigh the minor hassles, but this does not seem to be the case for shoulder rumble strips. This will clearly increase the cycling risk on the roads. Thank you much for your consideration. Next is from Cheryl Armstrong of Fort Collins, Colorado. Good morning. I hope you take a moment to read this. This email is regarding not putting rumble strips on the sides of roads in Marathon County. I am very much for the center rumble strips. I feel this would also be less money. I'm from Fort Collins, Colorado. It is the #1 biking community in the United States. They would never do anything to negatively affect their biking community. They want to keep their biking community happy because bikers are good community members. Bikers participate in life. They are members of their local church, village, town, city, school boards, and youth groups. They are active individuals and want others to be as well. They see value in being active and staying healthy and happy. Many in the biking community identify Wausau in the top 5 cities for recreation because of your trails, roads, and outdoor activities. Your county has been so wonderful to bikers. There are countless trail systems, mountain biking, cycling, walking, running, hiking, etc., and it is appreciated. These simple trails bring in revenue and tourism and relocation dollars. Ask WOW or Downtown River District locations. The biking community has a lot of money and there are lots of people involved. And the Wausau and Marathon County have a lot of things on their checklist. Just like you may have your hobbies, this is a hobby that many people travel for, and if Wausau continues to be known as a destination for bikers, it is a good thing for Wausau and all of Marathon County. It is a super marketing tool and it's relatively easy. Please do not put rumble strips on the side of the road because you will see a drop in good people coming to Marathon County. All bikers need our roads, trail maps, and signs. It is simple compared to many other things that are extremely expensive. Here is my story. I am originally from Wisconsin. I moved to Colorado 25 years ago. My husband is retiring and we are bringing all of his pension, money, and energy back to the area. In part because of the people here are good and also know right from wrong. Folks here are active and there are so many things to get involved in, including biking and so many other activities. I am here for the month of April to work as a seasonal position at Foot Locker. And during this month, I have competed in the Bulldog Stump 5K in Partyville for a fundraiser. I have registered with Wausau Wheelers and ridden many different trail systems. I have visited 12 different local churches and have volunteered at the Bridge Street Mission. I have hiked Rib Mountain and Mirror Lake State Parks. I have made great relationships with super people. I have spent quite a bit of money purchasing a home on the north side of Wausau in the village of Maine. I am just one person of the biking community, but the same thing is happening across the United States, where good people are relocating to areas that have good, hardworking folks who are active and love their communities. Please, please, please do not put side rumble strips on your highways and roads as it affects us negatively. We will no longer be able to bike on those roads due to the quality of life. I would love to speak with you regarding this. If you feel I know something about this, as I have lived in a touristy state for 25 years and been a very active member of my community in addition to being a biker for 20 years. I would also not mind sharing my story at the May 6th meeting because I will have returned to Colorado by that time to finish our relocation. Next is from Donna Hackman of Wausau Wheelers. Hello, I am an avid cyclist in Marathon County and a member of the Wausau Wheelers Club. I frequently ride many of the county roads around Weston. Just yesterday, county roads Z, Y, N, and J with a group from the club. I'm writing to express my concerns about the proposed rumble strips throughout the county. While I endorse centerline rumble strips, shoulder rumble strips would present a serious safety hazard to cyclists and would ruin the quality of cycling in Marathon County. Cyclists that choose to continue to ride on county roads will be forced to ride in the road opposed to the shoulder in order to avoid the strips, which will be dangerous to both cyclists and drivers. Many, like me, will abandon the county roads altogether. It is an exciting time to be a cycler in Wausau, both due to the growth of the sport and Wausau being named Best Small City in the U.S. for cycling. The club is looking to capitalize on this destination by hosting events that draws cyclers from the outside area. I would hate to see the addition of the shoulder rumble strips turn away interest of these events and cycling in the general area. Last is from, oh, Todd already read his email. I'm finished.
So much for that, Kendra. Let you catch your breath now.
No.
Do we have anybody else virtually or in person that wishes to provide public comment today? Hearing none, I'm going to close public comment. We're going to move on to item 3, approval of the minutes of the April 1st, 2021 Infrastructure Committee meeting. What is the pleasure of the committee?
Supervisor Dickinson, I motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Dickinson. Do we have a second?
Second, Gums.
We have a second by Supervisor Gums. Any further comments, questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the April 1st minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed, say nay. All right, the April 1st, 2021 Infrastructure Committee meeting minutes are approved. Moving on to item 4, policy issues, discussion, and potential committee determination. 4A, potential approval of the safety plan. Commissioner Griesbach, do you want to provide just maybe a high-level overview? I know we've talked in length now about the shoulder rumble strips, but can you maybe give an overview of the entire safety plan? And we'll probably end up focusing in on those shoulder rumble strips as part of our discussion.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, the overall, I actually have Renee online here, who is with SRF, who worked on the plan for us. Kevin has reviewed it in depth. The safety plan is just a tool, another tool for us to help us make our roads safer here in Marathon County. And along with that, to help develop a long-term strategy on how to eliminate these. I think there's some thought out there, you know, we mentioned the edgeline rumble strips. I'll just touch on that briefly here. The center line, edgeline, it's not something we're gonna go out and do tomorrow. When we're building the highways, that's what this whole part of this whole plan was for, whether it be the edgeline, center line rumble strips, fixing up a couple intersections, putting chevrons on. It's gonna be a part of our 2050 plan. So none of these are gonna happen tomorrow. Again, it was a review or when they run through she studied our safety issues in Marathon County. They reviewed our accident histories in Marathon County. The plan has some low-cost solutions, such as chevrons around curves, cleaning some right-of-way, part of our typical maintenance work, and then also has some higher-cost projects. You know, again, fixing an intersection, one of them that pops in my head is the intersection of Highway Q and G, where we'd like to straighten that intersection out, where we just bring in a single leg instead of the process that's out there right now. So that's kind of the high-level look at this, but Kevin, did you want to add any comments as regarding your review on this?
Just before you do that, I want to just highlight one of the things you said, and that this isn't going to be something that once it gets approved, that we're going to be going out, you know, later this year and putting in center line and edge line rumble strips on all of our roads. It's going to be as part of different road projects in the future. Is that correct?
That is correct. The only one that's really in there for this summer is Highway P. We like to put in some rumble strips around the curves out there. So example, that would
Right.
be the only one unless we want to try a pilot someplace later on. But as part of the plan, the only one scheduled is that. Again, I had some thoughts about maybe doing a pilot, but we can discuss that a little bit later down the road here.
Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, kind of stole my thunder with that one. I was gonna note that Highway P, there are 3 curves that are out there that are in this year's paving program that call for the shoulder rumble strips along those curves. And the other item, I guess I wanted to kind of clarify a little bit, there was discussion of roads like Highway J, where right now we have 11 to 12 feet of asphalt out there, and the plans call for shoulder rumble strips. I just wanted to clarify that those shoulder rumble strips would not be installed on that pavement that's out there. They'd be installed in conjunction with a widening of that pavement and adding a paved shoulder outside of there. We're just working on plans for that right now. but it would probably look to be a 3 to 4 foot paved shoulder outside of the rumble strips on there. So I wanted to clarify, because I know that's one of the questions that some of the people had, thinking that 12-foot pavement was going to have a shoulder rumble strip on it, and that would not be the case.
May I also just quick add Randy on to that, you know, I had mentioned earlier, just want to point out, again, the safety plans is a tool to help us to reach our goal. In our strategic plan, one of our outcome measurements was by 2031, December 31st, 2022, the automobile crash rate will be reduced by 5% in Marathon County. Again, this safety plan is a tool to help us reach part of objective 10.12 of our strategic plan.
Supervisor Pfeffrick, you're still on mute. We can't hear you.
Thank you. Just talking to myself here. Sorry, is there anything, anybody else on staff or consultant wants to add before we get into our committee discussion?
Renee, would you like to just talk briefly about what you've seen in the past, and just not here in Marathon County, maybe some results of the safety study that you've seen out of Brown County and other ones that you've done in the past?
Sure. So my name is Renee Keel. I work with SRF Consulting Group. I'm a traffic engineer. I've been doing safety-related traffic work for about 20 years now. I've done a lot of safety plans looking at really just focusing on data-driven approaches to identifying locations that are safety risks for motorists. A lot of the data we look at is existing crash data and where the trends are occurring, and then also characteristics of the roadways when we identify the high priority locations. One of the things we looked at in Marathon County is we really focus on fatal and serious injury crashes and tried to mitigate those crashes. And so of the 5-year data we looked at for Marathon County, there were about 90 of those crashes where there was either a fatality or a serious injury. And of that 90, 30 of them were run off the road crashes on the edge of the road. This is a trend nationwide. This is also a trend that about 50% of fatalities happen on 2-lane rural roadways of vehicles running off the road. And so we know that this is a big issue. And so the point of our study was to go through and identify locations where we could really make an impact on reducing the serious injury crashes that happen on your roads. So we look at crash history, we look at roads that have higher ADTs, we look at roads that have a lot of access points along them, and also that have a lot of curves along the roadways. And those are the ones that we really try to focus in on and trying to reduce the opportunity for a car to run off the road. Curves are particularly dangerous area where people take curves too fast and they run off the road because they don't slow down or they're not paying attention for a split second and they run off of a curve. So this is some of the data we look at to identify high priority locations for edgeline rumbles. I've done a lot of research on the impacts of edgeline rumbles, and if you look at the federal level from FHWA, the Federal Highway Association, edgeline rumbles have been proven to reduce these serious crashes from 26 to 46%. There's been many, many studies that have been looked at. Those numbers are numbers from many studies combined. So while I understand it is a challenge for bicyclists, I also, am looking at it from the lens of saving lives of drivers. And, this is the data we use to identify the high priority locations within your county.
Good, thank you for that. I think that's a good transition into our committee discussion. I think we've heard from a number of people through the public comment, and I think it brings up some really interesting conversations and just points that we need to consider as part of all of this, and more so that the roads aren't necessarily just a single-use automobile highway. We also have our bike, we've got walkers, we've got runners, we've got ATVs, and how do we keep everyone safe, frankly? So I'll open it up to discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I have some questions for our consultants.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Supervisor Robinson.
So you indicated that there was a 26 to 46% reduction associated with the rumble strips, and you indicated there were 90 crashes involving death or injuries, but 3 were off-road crashes in curves. So is that a 26 to 46% reduction in those 3, or higher? And then a second question is, given your recommendation of a 2-foot shoulder paving, have there been safety improvements where you've had a wider shoulder on curves to accommodate multimodal use? For instance, a 4-foot shoulder or greater.
So let me answer your first question about the numbers of crashes. I may not have spoken clearly. So of the 90 that are serious injury crashes in Marathon County, there were 30 crashes that were run off the road that were related to either fatalities or serious injury crashes. And of those 30, 7 of them happened on curves. So I think I heard you say 3. I just wanted to clarify that the number is actually 30 that were run off the road, serious injury. Your second question was about the shoulder paving and rubbles. So typically when we are looking at adding shoulder rumbles, it is locations where if there's not space on a particular shoulder currently, we recommend at a minimum a 2-foot shoulder and a rumble so that there's space to add the rumble on the outside of the edge line. Now, when you're talking about a bicycling community that is desiring to use a shoulder as well, there is guidance at the federal level to, at a minimum, provide a 4-foot shoulder outside that rumble. So the 2-foot wide shoulder is primarily just to make sure that you can fit it in on the edge of the road and focused on making sure that you have that ability to add the rumble and have the space. If you are looking at a bicycle shared use, I would definitely recommend considering a wider shoulder to accommodate that space.
So is that a speed related recommendation also, or is it, it's, when I look at the report, we've got table 6, which is your safety strategies. You've got your table 8, which is recommendations for priority curve projects. I don't see the 4-foot shoulder recommendation in here specifically. So if we're adopting a safety report, is that your recommendation, and should that be incorporated in your report?
I would say my focus was to just identify locations where rumble strips should be considered. And if, like I said, a 4-foot minimum is needed to pave the shoulder to fit a rumble. The 2-foot minimum is required to fit the rumble. Locations where bicycle routes are was not included in this report because we were looking at it mostly from the perspective of vehicle safety. So if there are locations where those overlap, we could update the report to highlight the 4-foot shoulder at those locations, but the recommendation is just the minimum of 2 feet just to get the rumble in that space.
Are there any other questions from the committee members?
Supervisor Dickinson.
Go ahead.
So I think you kind of answered the question I was going to ask, Renee, and that is, did you consider bicyclists, bicycle routes, or was it just the vehicle accidents? And kind of along those lines, I wonder what kind of bicycle accident data there is available that could be used, in this research. And one other kind of question there is, what did Brown County do? We've got this research from Brown County. How did they incorporate bicyclist routes. I would assume they probably have quite a few bicycle routes, just based upon the kind of community. So those kind of, if you can comment on those.
Sure. Well, again, like I said, our focus was looking at, just looking at the data of where crashes are occurring and where high priority locations are, regardless of if it was a bicycle route or not. I understand that it's important to understand where the bicyclists desire to be and where the routes are, but my approach is independent and just looking at where crashes are occurring and where locations are that are at risk based on the roadway characteristics. So that was our focus, just looking at the risk of the characteristics of the road. We did work with Brown County to put together their plan, and similar approach, really looking at the crash history and the roadway characteristics to identify high priority locations. I can't speak for Brown County on how they have moved forward with building their rumbles and working with their bike community. I've talked to one of the commissioners there briefly, and I know that he is moving forward with rumbles, but I guess I'm not aware of how he's working with his bike community and what kind of modifications he's making.
Thank you. Does anybody else on the committee have any questions?
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair? Supervisor Jones. My question would be, how many of those accidents are caused by on the phone or texting? Do you have an idea of that?
No, that's the information that we all love to know. I mean, in the safety world and all the work that I do, it would really be helpful if we understood who is on their phone texting and distracted, but it's really hard for police officers to identify that when they're doing their crash reports, because the driver's usually not going to admit that they were on their phone, right? So we have estimates and assumptions that people were on their phone, but it's really not well documented, because what we use to identify crashes is crash reports that are submitted by police officers. They might indicate that the driver was distracted in their report as a causational factor of a crash, but there isn't necessarily proof that it was related to cell phone use. There is research at a national level that shows that about 90% of the cause of crashes are behavioral issues. So speeding or alcohol use, distraction, and those are things that are challenging to fix. And that is why we focus on things like rumble strips, because it does help those when people do make behavior choices with being distracted or drinking and driving, those sorts of things. Rumble strips are one of those things that really can help someone when they've made a poor choice and they're distracted and need that reminder that they're about to run off the road.
Can I comment again?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, I really think the thing is they're trying to make rumble strips fix people using phones, texting, talking, whatever. I would agree with the middle rumble strips. I would go along with the center rumble strips. But I think if it comes to the place where we have to approve the safety thing or whatever, as a committee, I'd like to see us disapprove shoulder rumble strips on county roads. For the very reason it's a distracted driver, and we're fixing something, and we're making a mess of the roads for other people. And so if I had to make that motion later to not take the recommendations about shoulder rumble strips, I would be glad to move that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gums. I understand somebody in the audience wishes to ask a question. Typically, this is the point in the meeting where it's amongst the committee discussion, but I'll open it up for a question from a member of the public. If you want to address the committee, the consultant, if you want to come to the podium and provide your name and ask your question, please.
I have a microphone at this table. This is Todd Troy again, resident of Rib Mountain, 226671 Swan Avenue, representing the Wausau Wheelers. For the traffic consultant, what was the difference in the accident mitigation rate with the installation of center rumble strips only versus center and shoulder rumble strips?
So the data for installation of centerline and shoulder rumble strips are separate, I guess. So there is data so the data I have for centerline rumble strips on a 2-lane roadway, you can expect about a 40 to 50% reduction in head-on crashes. When I look at the head-on crash data for Marathon County, there are, so I had it up here just a second. There were 5 serious or fatal crashes that occurred that were head-on crashes. When we look at run off the road, again, I said there was 30 that were serious that were run off road crashes. And shoulder rumble strips are shown to reduce those crashes 26 to 46%. So there is data that shows the reduction of the types of crashes for centerline and for shoulder rumble strips, not necessarily data that shows, both at the same time. I guess they're studied as separate entities, but compounding them together would reduce crashes overall. And I should say that I've been focusing a lot on the serious injury crashes, the life-changing ones. When I look at the total number of run-off-the-road crashes that have occurred in Marathon County, there's been 1,800 crashes in a 5-year period across the county. And of those, almost 650 of them have been run off the road crashes. So that's what, about 40% of all crashes are run off the road crashes in the county.
All right, thank you for that. I understand Commissioner Griesbach, you have a comment?
Yes, I just need to make a couple of quick comments here of a couple of things have been said. As far as centerline rumble strips without the edge line rumble strips on some of these roads, I'm being not a biker. I'm kind of torn on this one because I do understand that the centerline rumble strips will help reduce the head-on collisions. However, speaking with Dave Moret from Department of Transportation planner and also the bike regional planner, he suggests if you put in centerline rumble strips without the edge line, it's going to force the drivers over closer to the bikers just because they want to stay away from that edge line rumble strip. So a lot of comments being made about just centerline, it's something to think about. Supervisor Gums mentioned that, the approval of this plan without edge line rumble strips. I would strongly urge the committee to reconsider if that is the motion. Just for the fact of, there's a lot of areas that, again, Kevin had mentioned, myself both mentioned, County Trunk Highway P, not a biking area. We want to be able to put in edge line rumble strips along those curves. There's a couple other areas that there is a low volume of vehicles out there where the bikers out in the lane of traffic would not be an issue. And the last one is County Trunk Highway K. We've gone through a in-depth safety study on that project. We are receiving about $1.5 million of funding from the safety program, the state safety program, the HSIP program, which indicates we do need to put edge line and center line rumble strips on that, or we may lose the about $1.5 million of funding as part of that project from WISDOT.
All right, thank you for that. Do we have any other comments, questions from the committee?
Mr. Chair.
And Supervisor Dickinson, one more, if I could.
Let's go Supervisor Dickinson, then we'll go Supervisor Robinson.
Cool, thank you. I very much appreciate all of the folks coming and speaking on behalf of bikers and also the ATV UTV folks. I will say on a much smaller scale, I can understand and appreciate, although while not being a bicyclist, having little children at one point and biking and using strollers in our neighborhood, our village decided to chip seal our road, and that chip seal came off. And so having to deal with the debris of little stones, with little children falling off bicycles, and just the irritation of just being able to walk your neighborhood was a big issue for myself and other community members, and we actually did approach our village board about it. So I appreciate those folks coming here, advocating for themselves. I certainly would want our roads to be multimodal use. would in no way want to diminish those roads for our citizens, any of them. But I do understand as well that this is for severe accidents and saving lives. And there is evidence and data that suggests that we could be saving lives. We wouldn't want to do that at the risk of costing lives. So if we save 15 to lose 5, is that a really good trade-off? That would be, people using the bicyclists using those side of the roads. So I wouldn't want that to happen. My question, and it really doesn't, I don't know if it deserves an answer because there's so many people here who've spoken. What do the bicyclists suggest we do? What are their thoughts? Is it a wider strip of road? On the side, is it a 4-foot shoulder? Is it do nothing? Is it certain sections of our roads? We need to review every road and say, well, we're only going to do it in some of those because the bicyclists travel certain roads more heavily. Is it reducing the length of these rumble strips? Where maybe it's suggested 300 feet, we do it 100 feet. That's really, that information and some of the answers to those questions, I think would help me make a decision on it. Really, because ultimately we're just trying to save lives.
Absolutely. Supervisor Robinson.
I was going to, I agree with the point raised by Supervisor Dickinson. I intend to make a motion to approve the safety strategies and recommendations, but would like to direct staff to develop an implementation plan relating to shoulder rumble strips in context of shoulder width and shoulder design to accommodate multimodal transportation and bring that back to this committee for future discussion. I think that this would allow them, and I would expressly give them permission to move ahead with County P for this year, given the fact that that's not on a bicycle route, but ask that they develop a specific implementation plan for shoulders on those multimodal roads that we have identified as part of our bike ped plan, and bring that back in. I think that we could then look at those unique factors such as Highway K going forward, but I think that this begs for a multimodal approach, and while the report seems to be safety related, it didn't envision that would let us have that discussion on the width of that shoulder, and how we can accommodate those future or those mixed uses. So if it's appropriate, I would move then that we approve the safety strategies and recommendations. However, that we direct staff to develop an implementation plan relating to the shoulder rumble strips in context of shoulder width and design, and specifically aimed at those that are associated with our bike ped plan, and bring that into the county to allow them to proceed with County P in 2021.
Thank you for that. We have a motion by Robinson. Do we have a second? If nobody else, I'll second the motion by Robinson. I think was thinking on a similar line to that. I think that there's a lot of value in what we're seeing with this study, but there's some more considerations of how do we incorporate the multimodal facilities and plans into our future. And I think that needs some more discussion based on what we're going to solve here today. Does anybody on the committee have any discussion on that? Does anybody have any thoughts on the proposal from Commissioner Griesbach in terms of pilots at this time, or is that something that we want to hold off on and have some future discussion on?
Chair Paving, Commissioner Griesbach, again, there is thoughts about, we had internal discussion on thoughts on maybe like a half-mile pilot on Highway KK. Supervisor Dickinson wanted to know what the input was from the area, and at our last meeting, we had noted that we had received an email from Andrew Lynch from the March Wausau Metropolitan MPO Bicycle and Ped Committee. The committees voiced their displeasure at edge lane rumble strips, kind of going for the same things that we discussed. And it says it was the committee's members to wish that the county highway only uses treatment in targeted areas with the following conditions: paved shoulder extend to 5 foot, commitment to clear the shoulders, sweep blow on a monthly, non-winter basis. So again, that is kind of answering Supervisors Dickinson's. And I also, maybe Renee would just want to mention about the flexibility of different types of designs on rumble strips or bikes could be, locations, depth, gaps in them. That's one thing if we would do a pilot, we would like to take a look at is opening up sections. Renee probably knows those off the top of her head, but like a 75-foot rumble strip with a 20-foot opening or something like that. So I don't know if Renee could just comment real quick on different ideas or design aspects of that. And then also in closing, with Supervisor Robinson's motion, he had mentioned the Highway P for this year. We are in final stages of the Highway K design. So that'd be something also that we would ask the committee to consider, that to receive the $1.5 million funding, we're going into final stages of that design. We need to have a decision on that, if not today, real soon. Thank you.
Go ahead, Renee. Did you have anything to respond to Commissioner Griesbach's questions?
Yeah, so I just want to reiterate that, while rumble strips there's a typical design for them on the shoulder, there is flexibility in that design. So the rumbles themselves can be narrower, so not as wide. They can be not as deep in the road. The location they're placed on the edge of the road can be closer or actually within that painted edge line itself, so the shoulder space itself can be wider. There can be gaps in the rumbles, so it doesn't need to be continuous for miles and miles. You can have a 40-foot section of rumbles with a 10 to 12-foot gap to allow for bicyclists to cross over. So there are options, I guess, is my point, and we can, you can work with the bicycle community to decide what works best for everybody. I have heard a couple mention that debris is a problem on the shoulder, and that's something that can be discussed as well as far as maintenance and such. So just want to clarify that there is flexibility in the design that can be worked together on.
Thank
Question
you.
for Renee.
Go ahead.
Renee. Yeah, Renee, then, I'm sorry if I missed it. I had something come up here. What, in the center of the road, how wide are they? Aren't they, the rumble strips, the same width as the white line?
On the edge line, you mean?
No,
Yeah.
on the center line. I'm referring to Highway 13 where they are. Aren't they the same width as the white stripes in the center of the road?
I would have to look at WisDOT's or the state's design standards as to how wide they currently are. I think they range from 8 to 12 inches wide. They can vary though. They can be wider than the edge line itself. So it really just depends on the design. It is flexible. I've seen flexibility in other locations. I guess we'd just have to work with design standards in your state.
No, I mean the white stripes in the middle of the road, not on the edge, in the middle of the road.
Okay, so the yellow stripes in the middle, the rumbles. So, well, you're talking about the center rumbles though, right? The width of the center rumbles? Yes. Again, I would have to look at the design standard to know the exact width of them. I can't say off the top of my head. They're usually somewhere between 8 and 12 inches wide.
They're 8 inches in WisDOT.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Supervisor Seiler.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for Jim. Can you elaborate a little bit more about the Highway K project, which you said is in planning? What does that include right now as far as these rumble strips? And if it were okayed today, is there room in this application with the federal funds to make some changes? You're talking about the pilot. I don't know that we have enough information to make a really informed decision on that today. Can you share some more information on that for us, please?
Two different items. Highway K, single K, north of Wausau.
Okay.
We have received the $1.5 million, which the plans again are going in the final stages. If we would eliminate center line, edge line rumble strips, we would lose that funding. Highway KK, again, that's a local project. That was the one I had talked about possibly doing this a simple pilot because in about two to 3 years, we're going to be putting a cap on that road, and if it doesn't work, we could easily cover those up. But Highway K, if we want the funding, it's based on edge line and center line rumble strips. If we eliminate them, we will lose the funding.
Okay, thank you for that clarification on the two different roads. And can you remind us how, are there bike trails now on Highway K? How is that a heavily used bike route on K?
I don't believe so. Jerry Klein also had mentioned if.
Can I just answer that question? Sandy, this is Jerry Klein, and that is not a very busy bike route, K itself. The only place that there's a lot of bike activity on K is from WW to Hillcrest, what is that, Jim, like 400 yards? Yeah. A couple hundred yards, and Jim's there's opportunity to get the bikers off that little piece, but the rest of K, K on the other hand is a very busy route, but K is not.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you both very much. That's very helpful. And I'd just like to comment now. I'd like to thank everybody that came to speak today, and also the supervisors for and everyone's really thoughtful input on this. It's pretty clear that anything we do in the future, even though I know that the county and different groups, regionally, try to really communicate on what's happening. But this is a pretty clear example that you can never plan enough. And we just need to be really, really careful. And again, thank you to Renee for the work you've done. But I would hope that in the future, even though I know this isn't your absolute focus, but it makes it really difficult as local officials to make these decisions if this type of thing isn't considered in the planning. So just something to consider. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Supervisor Robinson, I would move to amend the motion to allow for the final design of Highway K with rumble strips as a safety component.
All right. Do we have a second?
Supervisor Seiler seconds that.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any comments on the amendment at this point? Kendra, were you able to get that amendment?
I got it, yes.
Okay. Would you be able to just repeat the amendment for everybody?
The amendment.
I can write down my notes. Usually I listen to this again and I'll make this sound nicer, but it was just to allow the final design of Highway K to include the rumble strips into the original.
Very good. Is everybody clear on what the amendment is for? If you're not, please speak up.
Could you repeat that, please?
Hearing no questions. Go ahead.
Could you repeat that amendment? I couldn't hear you back here. Use the microphone. I can't hear you back here.
Sure. It's just to allow the final design of Highway K to include the rumble strips. The amendment is to include the final design of Highway K to include the rumble strips.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
All right, we've got a motion and a second on the amendment. And to be clear, we're just simply voting on the amendment at this point. All those in favor of the amendment, please clarify by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed, say nay. All right, the amendment passes. We're back to our main motion. Any further discussion?
Will you repeat the main motion?
Kendra, would you be able to repeat the main motion? I know it was quite lengthy. I did not get it all written down.
I can try. Again, usually I go back and look at this, but it's a motion
Thank
by
you.
Robinson to direct staff to accommodate shoulder rumble strips regarding width and design to accommodate multimodal transportation. But hold on. If you could see my notes, this would make sense. There's a motion to pass the safety plan to include the rumble strips, but to direct staff to accommodate shoulder rumble strips regarding width and design-ish.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe the motion was to approve the approve the safety plan, and then bring back the conversation about how the edgeline rumble strips will be incorporated into our future projects based on further conversations of the committee and taking into account the multimodal needs of the community as well as incorporating the rumble strips on County K. Supervisor Robinson, are we on the right path here?
Yes, it was to approve the safety strategies and recommendations and direct staff to develop an implementation plan relating to the use of the rumble strips in context of multimodal transportation, and including is a discussion of the design with end gaps of those strips, of the shoulders and strips. And we exempted Highway P and with the Amendment K.
Yeah, P and K here, sorry. Any other comments from the commissioners or from the committee members?
So explain it again. So it is not opposing rumble strips?
Nope, this would include approval of the safety plan, really with continued conversation of how the rumble strips will be incorporated into future designs. I think the conversation today has been really good, and appreciate the public as well for joining us in this conversation. There's a lot of different things running through my head as we have these conversations. One of them is, most importantly, how do we keep people safe, motorists safe, bicyclists safe, any users on our county highways and roadways in general. And I think the edgeline rumble strips have a real place in that. I can say myself, I was running along Old 51 in Cronenwetter a month ago with my dog, and I was within a second or two deciding how far I needed to jump into the ditch because there was somebody that was on their phone that was driving on the edge of the road about 50 yards in front of me. And had there been edgeline rumble strips there, I think it would have got their attention. So there's definitely an aspect to safety with that for motorists, bicyclists, walkers, pedestrians, whoever's users there. So there is value in that, but at the same time, we want to make our facilities as multimodal friendly to everybody involved here. I think that conversation that we talk about how we're going to incorporate these designs in the future, I think there'd be a valid conversation with the MPO's Bike and Ped Committee on that. I think that would be a good conversation to have in passing through and development of how we're going to move this forward. But overall, I think this is the right path. Any further questions, comments from the committee members? Hearing none, we'll go for a vote here. Let's go for a roll call vote on this, please.
Biffrick?
Kendra, yep.
Seiler?
Aye.
Dickinson,
Yes.
Johnson? Absent. Gums,
Yes.
Robinson,
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
All right. We have a unanimous approval to move forward with the motion. So I want to thank everybody for the conversation today. We're going to move on to item 4B, county, or 4B, county policy in relation to large-scale events. Commissioner Griesbach.
Thank you. I'm more of on a fact-finding mission today for this item. It was brought up at our last meeting that we need to discuss it, which is long overdue. It's both on my work plan, and I know it's also on Administrator Lance Leonard's work plan, that we need to come up with a special event policy here for all of Marathon County. So there's a few items, and what I plan on doing is I reached out to person I met online in Charlotte. They're sending me some information here in the next couple of days on their process that they go through in the larger community. I've also have the event application policy through the city of Wausau, which I will be forwarding you. But there's a few items that I would like to have you to think about for when we bring this back. One thing, what are we all looking to cover in this policy? Are we going to ask for 100% cost recovery? Again, that's just not for us, but it's for the sheriff's department and anybody else involved, the health department, if it's a large scale where they need to bring out food inspectors. On the highway side, are we willing to close down highway for events? And when will permits be needed and when will they not? Right now, the city of Wausau, they actually have a 3-tier permit, a class 1, a class 2, and a class 3. Again, I will forward those to you. But in their structure, any public work staff, they're charged for any time out there. It's $70 for weekends and nights and $45 for the day. So there's setup fees for the Parks Department, putting up signs, picnic tables. So I will send that to you in lieu of time today. I guess I'll just send that to you so we have some input from the committee, unless some committee members right now have some idea of the direction that we should go on this. This is a venture that Lance, myself, Chad Billup, City of Wausau, Jamie Polly, we started on last year when we kind of got sidetracked with the pandemic going on. So we like to pick those up, but we need to have some input from the committee on what all should be included in this permit. Are we going to be looking for 100% cost recovery? I don't know if Lance Leonard, Administrator Leonard, you want to add?
Sure. If I may, Chair Pfeifferich, just briefly add a couple of things.
Yep, go ahead. If
Thank
you could also, I know a public safety committee discussed this a little bit at their meeting yesterday. I was hoping to catch that portion of it, but I got wrapped up in a meeting and never did. So if you could talk a little bit about any conversations they had.
Sure, and that's exactly where I was gonna conclude my comments with. So I appreciate the segue. As Jim referenced, this was really a project that started in kind of at the end of 2019, and we did make a fair amount of headway with identifying existing policies. You know, we began this process thinking Marathon County had no policy on large assemblies. And in fact, we do. We have an ordinance on large assemblies, but what it covers is events of 3,000 or more people that are gathering in one place for 8 or more consecutive hours. And it requires a long list of various plans and services that event planners must consider and have in place through a permit application, things such as emergency services, so fire, security, plans with respect to solid waste, garbage, plans with respect to toilet facilities, water facilities, so all sorts of plans that you would expect if you were running a large-scale event. But what our ordinance misses is kind of like what Jim talked about. It's really a couple of key pieces. One, it really ignores, I think, the reality we all understand that, you know, you still need to think about those things if your event is less than 8 hours and you're having a large number of people. You know, you can't have 2,000 people for 4 hours and not have thought about where people are going to go to the bathroom. Or if you're holding an event in August, what water you're going to have on site for those individuals for that period of time. So there's a kind of that tiered structure that Commissioner Griesbach referenced we need to flush out a little bit, and we've been working with the city of Wausau. We've had a number of meetings with them again at the end of 2019 and in the first 2 months of 2020 before our efforts were diverted to pandemic response. But the second piece is the one around cost recovery that Jim referenced. And the direction we've gotten in 2019 from public safety was to recover 100% of costs. That is, if Jim's staff need to go out and, you know, the request for the event is it's a marathon, for example, and it's going to be run on a series of roadways, and on the county roadways, they'd like Jim to set up safety barrels or barricades in a couple of areas, or perhaps they're asking the sheriff's office in some unincorporated areas to provide traffic control. The direction we had from the standing committees in 2019 was we want our permit process to provide for 100% cost recovery, but we still need to have some additional details as we work through this. There are some examples. Portage, Oneida, and other counties have large assembly ordinances that have a little bit different structure, which I think we can borrow from, but this idea, again, of how do we accommodate large events is going to be a work in progress. And quite honestly, there are policy decisions that are going to be made during this process that cannot be staff-driven. I mean, staff can bring you the information and we can draft ordinances, but at the end of the day, there are a couple of key pieces where we're going to need county board leadership involvement. And that was the discussion, a very brief discussion at Public Safety yesterday, and ultimately the chair of Public Safety suggested that the matter be brought to the executive committee to discuss two things. One, the priority of this project in light of all the other projects that the county board has put on the administration work plan, and two, to have a discussion about perhaps the utilization of a work group structure that has been utilized by the HR Finance and Property Committee, identifying a couple of key supervisors to work with staff to bring a draft forward. So those two things are going to be talked about at the executive committee meeting next week.
Thank you for that introduction of our update of sorts. Does anybody have any committee members, do you have any thoughts on that update? I think one of the things, hearing that public safety was talking about 100% reimbursement. Interested to hear any thoughts on that, if anybody disagrees with that, or any other aspects of the update.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I would have some questions. So as I recall, when we were last having conversations about that, the initial conversations, I think there were so many things that clearly hadn't been considered. And so I had not had the luxury of attending public safety the other day or hearing any of the conversations. So Lance, can you share, as I recall, some of the sticking points back in 2019, would that include groups like the Edgar FFA or local communities that are doing a dairy breakfast? Do we have a definition yet of, is it a size type thing, or can you just enlighten me a little bit where some of that has gone at this point?
Sure. Great question. Certainly the size of the event is one of the areas we need to dive in deeper and come up with those terms. Like I said, the current large assembly ordinance defines a large assembly, which does require a permit application, as one of 3,000 or more people for 8 or more hours. We do have, to your second question, events of the type like an FFA event or a farm breakfast. Currently, we do not have as far as I know, a defined policy on when there is a request for county services at any of those events, any guiding principles on whether or not the county is going to do that, and if so, what cost recovery we should have. I had a conversation earlier this week, actually it was last week, I apologize, with the deputy chief of the Wausau Police Department about the city of Wausau's policy, and similarly, there's a lot of law enforcement safety services that are necessary for events to currently go on where there's not a chargeback provision for those services. And I think that's one of the things that we hope to work on with a couple of key members of the county board that are interested in this topic. That's my hope that comes out of executive. Certainly, I appreciate, and I know the rest of our staff appreciate the importance of these events to not only our local economy, but also just the character of our community. But to increase the transparency of the governmental support of those events. You know, we all have to manage budgets, and it's helpful. I think it's helpful to the public to know where county resources are going, whether it's to support those events, a certain event, and perhaps not another. That's one of the things we're going to need to flush out. And you know, one of the other shortcomings from the initial draft that I understand was brought forward in 2019 was it essentially set an arbitrary cap on the number of these events. I believe it was 6. And very quickly, we heard quite clearly from, I think it was one of the first calls or emails I got in 2020 as the administrator, was that the previous draft, you know, there were more than 6 events that one organization was planning on holding that coming year. So there's a lot that needs to be flushed out. Like Jim said, we're going to look to other communities to try to get some guidance. My initial inclination is a tiered approach, like Jim referenced. But what the details of that look like, quite honestly, I don't know at this point. But I do think it certainly behooves us to get to a place where if someone is going to have an event with 2,000 people for 6 hours, that they should have thought about, particularly given the wide range of events, that they should have thought about emergency management plans, that they should have thought about security planning, things such as, again, garbage, toilet facilities. All those things are important, and really they're important to, first and foremost, the safety of the residents. So we have a lot of work to do, but next week at executive, one of the primary questions is this work a true priority in light of the other items that are on the work plan? And second, if so, what does that look like in terms of county board involvement on the front end to try to identify a couple of key supervisors that would like to work very closely with staff in that policy generation effort?
Yeah, I think those are really good questions for executive committee, especially given light how you're going to be a little short-staffed again for a period of time. I do think that this is an important conversation that we need to have. You know, how important is it in the bigger strategic plan picture is another topic of conversation. Just in my mind, I don't think it's as simple as saying that all events on county facilities need to have 100% reimbursement or payback. I think there's got to be some more considerations to that. Anybody else have any comments?
Yes, Supervisor Dickinson.
Go ahead.
A football game, a wrestling tournament on a Saturday, easily going to go over 2,000 people. The idea that we would have to have, some sort of all these little metrics, these little thresholds that would have to be met for some local community like Fenwood to have a softball tournament. We're going to have a lot of people coming and going. I do have a concern with that people just can't carry out kind of their normal village business in these events, these fundraising events or whatever. You know, think about a bike. Think about bicycling. What if you have a bicycle or a walk to raise money, a fundraiser for someone's cancer treatment? So those are considerations I look at to just let people normally carry out their business without having to contact the county for some kind of approval or meet some ordinance policy. I understand the conversation, but those are some considerations. Because I guess right now people just carry on, right? They don't call the county, do they? Or they do, and then someone says, "Yeah, it's okay." Is that what we're saying? They call the sheriff's office or something, or do we have an answer on that? How does that work now?
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I think Supervisor Dickinson, you raised very good points. Certainly, there are exceptions in the draft policies that, from other counties that we found for events of the nature that you're talking about. If they're taking place in a stadium, it's a sporting event, things of that nature, there are exceptions in those drafts that we've seen. For events taking place at a softball tournament like you referenced, there's already a process in place through the Parks Department locally if they're using our park facilities, or if it's another municipality's park facilities, those things are already happening. And to your other point about utilization of roadways for a bike event or a walk, you're absolutely right. That was one of the things when I examined our initial draft. It was at the same time overly broad and overly restrictive. The county does not have the ability to, as far as I understand it right now, based on speaking with Corporation Counsel Corbett over a year ago, we can't tell people, hey, you cannot use the county roads. You can't go on the county roads to have 100 of your friends bike from here to, the Big O Plain Park. They can do that. The issue that the policy was seeking to address, as I understand it, is one where county resources are requested for that event. So if the sheriff's office is requested to conduct traffic control on a county highway or a town road through which the event is going, that there's some guiding principle for staff, or for Jim, some guiding principles for staff, so that staff aren't making determinations of what events are worthy of county resource allocation and which ones are not. But to your point, I mean, your questions are very well tailored. There are a lot of details that we need to think through in in the initial policy, when I first reviewed it, the draft, there were some significant issues, and you hit them right on the head with the questions you asked.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you bring up a lot of great questions, and just like our previous discussion, it's about balancing this out. But probably some conversations that need to happen. Does anybody else on the committee have any question on this or any comments? Otherwise, it sounds like there's going to be more opportunities to discuss this in the future. Hearing none, we're going to move on to item 4C. Request for additional funds for CIP bridge deck projects. Commissioner Griesbach.
Yes, we bid out our projects for our 4 bridge decks. We did the estimates last year when we asked for additional funding. Our costs, just as long as anybody else's that's gone to any home improvement stores, have gone up greatly. We had budgeted $1,230,000. We received 3 bids. Low bid was Zenith Tech at $1,544,924.50. So at this time, we're looking for the committee permission to go to HR Finance to cover the shortfall of $314,225. I spoke to
Commissioner. Can you talk a little bit about where these projects are located this year?
These 4 bridge decks are on County Chunk. There's 3 of them all down in the same area. One of them on Highway X over to Johnson Creek, which is about 1.5 miles, 2 miles north of County Chunk Highway C. We have 2 bridge decks on County Chunk Highway C, one just about 1/2 mile west of Highway X, and the other one is about 1.5 miles east of Highway X. And then we have one on Highway O, north of County Trunk Highway U. Again, we had went through these last year with the committee to discuss possible funding for these bridges. The three smaller bridges, we put in at $225,000, and a larger bridge over the Rib River and County Trunk Highway O, we had estimated at $550,000. But again, due to the increase in pricing and construction, we came a little short. I have already spoke to Finance Director Christy Cordes about, Christy Palmer, about where the funds would be. She has some ideas, so at this point, I guess we're just asking to go to HR Finance to see where we take those funds out of.
All right, thank you. Does anybody on the committee have any questions?
Move to approve. Gums.
We have a motion from Supervisor Gums to approve sorry, I got lost here. The request for additional funds for the CIP bridge deck project. We have a second.
I'll second that.
Tyler seconds.
We have a second from Seiler. Any questions, comments?
Just Supervisor Dickinson, how concerned are we for all of our projects then? Is this going to now apply to other things that we're getting done throughout the year, the cost of these resources?
We're bidding out culverts right now. We expect to see a jump in that. Our big bucket item wise is asphalt, with anticipation that this is going to happen for the first time ever. Last year, we actually bid out all of our asphalt projects in October, so we've received those bids already. They're about on budget.
Mr. Chair, this is
Very good. Any
Supervisor
other
Robinson.
Yep, go ahead.
At the last HR Finance Committee meeting, we looked at the overall inflationary pressures and associated with all of our projects, and there's a concern about what it might do with the North Central Healthcare facilities and others. So we're monitoring it. There are some suggestions we might look at staging it and modifying some of the contract provisions to allow for or more protections for the county given the price increases. But we are aware of it, and we're trying to look at it and modify some of our practices relative to procurement.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none. All those in favor of moving or approving moving the additional funds for CIP bridge deck projects onto HR and Finance signify by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes. We are on to item 5, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, resolution, or policy, which we have none. On to item 6, educational presentations and committee discussion. Stormwater update. Mr. Lang, take it away.
All right, just brought the annual report that's associated with our municipal separate storm sewer system permit through the DNR. Every year we go through our report, submit that to DNR, documenting the educational outreach and infrastructure work that we do related to stormwater. So we work with the North Central Wisconsin Stormwater Coalition, which is most of the municipalities within Wausau area, and then a few from outlying, including all the way down to Baraboo, and go through our report. I believe was submitted with the agenda to everybody. Just documents the level of effort that we're putting into it. For a little update, we are working with Strand Associates right now in completing kind of an evaluation of our program. We expect to get that done during this calendar year. And at that time, we'll find out if we have any additional infrastructure needs that we're going to need to do related to our county highway system. Traditionally, we have not had many issues. We have a primarily rural system with shoulders and ditches, and it really does a good job of cleaning up a lot of the stormwater and getting us in compliance. So don't expect a whole lot, but there are some new requirements out there, so by the end of this year, we should know about that. Does anybody have questions on anything in the annual report?
Does anybody have any questions?
Mr. Chair, I don't have a question, I have a comment. The City of Wausau Waterworks Commission is embarking on a rain barrel program to try to capture it, and is providing a $25 subsidy for purchasing of rain barrels, and they've arranged with a vendor to make those available. It's something that other communities may want to look at going forward, but just throw that out there for activities we'll report on next year.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Do we have a sweeper that could be used on the road if there is a bicycle path that needs sweeping? Or a shoulder that needs sweeping for the bicycle community?
Yes,
I don't
we
know if
actually
that's
have a couple
necessarily related
different
here, but
ones.
go
We
ahead.
have one that will suck up the material, and we also have one that just brooms it off. I did receive a text last night from a very avid bicyclist in Marathon County. He's in this room sitting behind me.
Jerry?
He had mentioned that he sent me a picture of a couple of different items, and we had a brief conversation, but County Chunk Highway Double N, for example, he was concerned that we have not swept that. I'm happy to tell Jerry that if he went out there this afternoon, it was already swept. We swept it this morning. We are going to appoint one person out of our crew guys. I talked to one of my supervisors this morning, and it's kind of be in his corner. I feel if you empower somebody to do a job, they take the responsibility. So we discussed about appointing somebody today just to kind of monitor all those paved shoulders in Marathon County. It's gonna be his job to say, hey, there's some debris out there, we need to get out there and sweep that road. So we have kind of addressed that issue in the first stages this morning.
All right, do we have any questions on the stormwater update? Hearing none, thank Kevin for the report. On to item 6B, budget transfer from imbalance to prepare shovel-ready projects for America's Job Plan. Commissioner Griesbach.
All right, I need to share my screen. Jerry may have to help me.
You're good. Just get the share button.
There.
No, grab the top one, because that'll show your, since you're only on one screen. Just grab that guy. Yep.
Teaching an engineer new tricks.
There you go. You're good.
Hey, what I want to share this. There we go. We are trying to be proactive and shovel-ready for the, whatever you want to call the plan that they keep changing the name on. But it is for, right now, it is the America's Job Plan. Talking to people in the industry, we realize that hopefully infrastructure is going to be a great beneficiary of the additional funding that's coming out. So once they start saying, do you have a shovel-ready project? I want to be able to turn around and pull one off my shelf and say, here you go. And they say, well, that's great, we got some more money. And then I'm going to turn to another shelf and pull another plan off. And they say, well, that's great, we still have more money. I'm going to, again, grab to my shelf and have another plan ready. And when they ask me they have more money, I'm going to just keep pulling plans off the shelf. So we will, our plan right now is to transfer of our fund balance $225,000 for the projects I have displayed on the screen. The County Chunk AAA project from the county line to Highway 97 and the County Chunk Highway T project from the county line to 97. Those will be a asphalt project where we'll be going out, analyzing the road at some point here shortly and saying that we're going to pulverize those roads and repave them. Both of those roads would have bicycle accommodations on them, by the way. County Chunk Highway X from 153 up to Wood Road, actually, it's the Bull Junior Bridge is right by there, but the Wood Road is a better calling point. Again, that'd be another project that we'd be looking at putting out, getting plans shovel ready for those. Again, it'd be an asphalt resurfacing project. County Chunk Highway J from 153 to State Chunk Highway 29. We've already applied for Bureau of Indian Affairs funding for that. Feel that we have a good chance of getting that. So we would need plans for that project one way or the other. So we're going to get those plans going up and ready. Part of the safety project that you just approved here earlier today, one of the intersections is County Chunk Highway Q and County Chunk Highway G. Again, that's in one of these curves where we have two different legs coming out on that intersection. We want to bring that down to one leg with a 90-degree turn at each one. So that'd be another project. And then in a review of our bridges, that we have found that the County Trunk Highway L Bridge east of State Trunk Highway 107, kind of area where Pago Restaurant is, that bridge needs to be replaced either with this funding or other sources of funding. So we want to get those plans ready in case we have some additional funding. So we are going to be asking the HR Finance, sending in the work for a $225,000 transfer so we can have design shovel-ready projects in lieu of when the funding comes available. We want to be ready to go so we receive that funding.
All right, does anybody have any questions on that? Are you looking for any action from the committee at this point?
Support from this committee is always good.
Supervisor Christensen, move to approve the plans.
Mr. Chair, this is Supervisor Robinson. In light of the fact that it's an educational item, we cannot take action
That's right.
today.
Yeah, I'm seeing that.
Sorry.
I believe this would just be a budget transfer. John, being the chair of HR Finance, do you need support from this committee, or we just send those in anyhow, don't we?
It would be a transfer request, and we can put it, if you're ready, we can put it on the agenda for next Tuesday.
Yep, Christie already has it.
Okay.
I guess with that being said, anybody that has interest in this and in support of it or opposed to it, I guess I would direct you to attend that Finance Committee meeting next week. Any other questions, comments on this item? Right, we're going to move on to item 6C, broadband update. Supervisor Robinson, go ahead.
All right. Very briefly, Wittenberg-Tell has finally received their formal approval of their Public Service Commission award. That was for, the county is contributing $72,000. We had budgeted $250,000 for potential support for the PSC application, so we've got a balance of about approximately $178,000 for projects. We are working with, we've reached out to LTD, which is a firm out of Minnesota that was the recipient of the Federal Communications Rural Opportunity Development Fund Award. They have submitted applications to the FCC that are being reviewed. It could take the rest of this year, but they've received $1.3 billion of awards countrywide. The Charter Communications, or CCO, also received about $1.2 billion. Both of those parties received large chunks of Marathon County. Jerry is working with Gary Hetzer to have a map showing which company has what areas. We are engaging them in opportunities to accelerate the project. What we've learned from about the Rural Opportunity Development Fund is that the FCC will take up to a year to approve the contracts. From that date, that they will have 4 years to develop a plan to get 40% coverage, and with a 20% additional coverage each year. Both of the projects are for gigabyte service, so it's fiber to the premise. So that's good news, but the concerns are that it could be 5 years out before we see much of that. So we have finally made a good contact at Charter, and we've had ongoing discussions with LTD, and we'll continue those. We continue to work with other internet service providers to address some of the gaps, and we're trying to clarify the role of University Extension and McDevco in providing support for ongoing efforts with broadband efforts in the community. So any questions?
Very good. Does anybody have any questions on that? Hearing none, thank you for the broadband update. Move on to item 6D, updates from the CCIT Director, project update on enterprise resource planning selection. Go ahead, Mr. Klein.
Thank you. I just wanted to give you an update on that project. I'm going to take this off so I can talk a little better. We hired a consultant last fall to help us write the RFP for that project, and released it in December, got the responses back in January, had 11 respondents. We narrowed it down to 3, did 2.5-day demos of each of those 3, and then ranked those again. We did follow-up calls with their references, basically due diligence with their reference checks over the course of the last month, and have narrowed it down to 2 right now. We sent them back requests for further clarification. One of the things that we well, there's 2 things we need to deal with. One, the proposals came back a lot more expensive than we expected. And second, the proposals had a bit of the kitchen sink in it. So we're working right now with the 2 that we've narrowed down to see if there's anything we can eliminate and lower the costs on it. And I'm pretty confident that we will be able to do that, and then we'll reprice with them probably within the next 3 to 4 weeks. And I should have a much better update at the next meeting. This is replacing our Kayenta system, which is our general ledger financial system, accounts payable, accounts receivable. And then that also is where payroll is done, our human resource information, keeping track of when employees were hired and how much they're paid. There's a scheduler component, there's a learning resource management piece of it, there's onboarding, budgeting. It's a huge project. It's gonna take a lot of resources from many departments to implement. One of the challenges that directly affects this committee is the highway department has very specific requirements on how they report they need to use a tool, basically an approach called job costing that allows them to charge back to the state. Jim's talked about this many times over the years. We are looking at what's the best way to do that. We may end up, we've also got 3 other tools that we'll probably have to look at. Jim and I have talked about this a couple of times. That's where that project's at. I think that we'll be negotiating the new price probably within the next couple of weeks, and then it'll be coming back through HR Finance for them shortly with more information about where the final price is. It's going to have an impact on the upfront costs and the operational costs year to year. Any questions on that project?
Any questions for Mr. Klein on the ERP or any other CCIT updates? Hearing none, thank you for the update, Jerry. On to item 6E, Commissioner's Report.
You have my reports. I won't go through it in detail. I just talked about the ATV, UTV issue real quick. I think I might have mentioned it earlier, but currently I just did a quick little count, and we have 29 different little segments of roads open through Marathon County. As the report also stated, we just denied one also, so we're not approving every one of them. So that otherwise, if you have any questions regarding the written report, I'll be free to take those.
Does anybody have any questions? Anybody questions? Otherwise, we're going to move on to item number 7, announcements. 7A, future meetings and agenda items. Road School is going to be June 7th through the 9th, 2021, Chula Vista, Wisconsin Dells. Commissioner Griesbach, do you have anything more on that for anybody interested?
We just got the draft agenda. I will send that to you if I have not sent the draft agenda to you, but if you do plan on attending, I'll get that agenda out to you today. If you do need to attend, we need to know here probably within the next couple of days. We don't have to get our payment in, but we need to get our meal count in here. So if you could get that in here in the next couple of days, I appreciate it. Unless if somebody knows off the top of their head that they're already coming, I'll mark you down.
So if anybody has any interest in that, please get with Commissioner Griesbach shortly. Item 7A2, update on 2050 transportation plan for North Central Planning, and that'll be coming at a future meeting and at our next meeting on June 3rd, 2021. Does anybody have anything additional?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is Christensen.
Yep, go ahead.
Is it possible for me to get something put on the agenda for next month? Can we revisit that ATV ordinance? Is that possible?
Yeah, we can have a discussion of that at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
there's nothing else, we're on to item number 8.
Move to adjourn?
We have a motion to adjourn. Second by Robinson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right, thank you everybody for your time today. Really appreciate staff's work on a lot of these projects and the good discussion we had today. So enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye.